Okay, today we're going to be looking at one of the most popular knife sharpeners on the internet, or at least on Amazon anyway, but I can't imagine how it's not the most popular on the internet because this thing has like over 95,000 reviews on Amazon. Whether or not those reviews are legit, we'll never know, but let's see what this thing actually does to a knife edge up close. Before we start, let's see what the knife sharpener itself looks like up close. And this is the carbide side of the sharpener, and you can see it is not, well, it just doesn't look super great. I'm not real sure how you're supposed to get a perfect edge on a sharpener that doesn't look perfect in the first place, but I'm sure there's going to be some experts in the comments who let me know immediately. The ceramic side I was not able to get a very good picture of since it is pretty much translucent white ceramic, which means that I cannot expose properly with the setup that I have. At least, I'm not able to with my limited knowledge of macro photography, but this is what that looks like. So the knife I'm going to be using is just one of my wife's cheap Pampered Chef kitchen knives. The edge is not in very good shape. It has all kinds of chips in it and is extremely dull. Let me show you what it looks like first, before we sharpen. Here's what it looks like. As you can see, we have a very bad looking edge, and these large chips are going to come back to haunt us in a second. After a few passes, this is what the edge is starting to look like. As you can see, we are starting to round over some of those large chips, and that's bad. And as we progress a little bit farther, you can see we start to introduce a little bit of a wavy pattern into the edge of the blade due to those chips. Now what happens when you want to remove that wavy chippy pattern on the apex of the blade? Well, you need to run it through the sharpener a whole bunch more times, which actually makes the problem even worse. Let me show you. Now here's what the edge looks like after what I'm going to call a complete reprofile on the carbide pull-through knife sharpener. And this is one of the ugliest apexes I've ever seen in my entire life. It's just not good. Now here's another section of blade where the wavy pattern is even worse, and as you continue to use this sharpener, these waves are just going to get deeper and deeper and deeper, and there's no fixing it unless you go back to a more traditional sharpening method. Now this is the main problem with these style of sharpeners, is if you start out with a blade that looks like this, a blade that has all kinds of chips and damage along the edge, these sharpeners simply make those chips and damage even worse. Now the knife may appear to be a little bit sharper, and it is in some ways. It will cut some things, but the fact of the matter is that as you use the sharpener, the worse and worse this is going to get, to a point where you can't even use the sharpener anymore because the waves and chips in the knife edge are so bad that it won't even pull through the carbide sharpener. So what about the fine side, you may ask? Well, I tried the fine side and it didn't really do anything. Looking at the sharpener up close, it looks like the ceramic immediately clogged and or started to chip away. And so no, the fine side doesn't actually refine the edge any more than what the coarse side did. The fine side will not remove those deep indents in the blade left by the coarse side. So in my opinion, the fine side is completely useless. The problem with these style sharpeners is that they just remove way too much steel completely indiscriminately. They remove it in the places that you don't want to remove it from, as well as places that you do. And so if you equally remove the steel from both of those places, you end up with these big old chips and divots in the blade that just keep getting worse and worse. When using something like a more traditional sharpening stone, you spread out the contact area on the flat surface. So rather than having a very fine point of contact from a carbide corner, you have a large, flat, abrasive surface to help remove steel evenly across the knife edge. And the difference between the two is night and day. So here's the carbide pull-through sharpener after it's been hit on the carbide and the ceramic side. And here is a Sharpen Korematsu 1000 grit sharpening stone. This is actually the same section of blade that was used on the carbide sharpener, and it's been fixed with the Korematsu 1000 grit sharpening stone. And here's the carbide edge. This is where those waves started to get really bad. And then this is the same section of blade after about 5 minutes on the Sharpen 1000 grit Koromaku. You can still see those 3 chips in the blade, which will work out over time. Now yes, a more traditional sharpening stone does take more practice in order to use properly. However, what does that matter if you're spending $10 and basically getting a terrible result, in my opinion? Save your money, and even save your time and save your knives, and simply buy a proper sharpening stone and practice for 5 minutes, and you'd be surprised at the results that you can get. I'll leave some links in the description below to some proper beginner sharpening stones. One of them happens to be my favorite, possibly of all time. So be sure to check that out and save your money, save your time, save your knives, and yeah. Please subscribe if you're not subscribed. Hit the like button, and we'll see you in the next video.